Okay, guys. Oh, sorry, touching on. Oh, sorry, touching on you. There we go.
So, public pensions. I'd be thinking, aren't pensions for old people? I'm a college student, why should I care about this? Well, in 2014, Carson Bruno of Hoover Digest reported that California's two largest pension funds alone had over $250 billion in unfunded pensions, with totals in the state coming close to $1 trillion. For perspective, that's about $93,000 per household in California, $50,000 more than the average in the United States for a state. Every dollar of this debt costs us as taxpayers more money, and us as students more money, because public services and education are two of the first things to be cut in order to pay for these pensions. Today, I'm going to discuss how we got here and the current situation in California. Our public pensions are a serious crisis, one that could seriously damage the future of our state. So, the first major cause of the current pension issue is defined benefit plans. Defined benefit plans essentially are the government saying to pensioners that they'll receive a fixed payment for the rest of their life based on their years worked and their final salary, regardless of how much money is actually in the pension fund. And so as a result, according to Joel Fong of Journal of Risk and Insurance 2015, the unfunded liabilities associated with civil service defined benefit pensions are both substantial and uncertain. So as a result, as life expectancy increases, the payouts also increase without an equal increase in funding. And so taxpayers end up subsidizing these pensions. For example, this year, taxpayers will pay $5.4 billion towards state pensions in addition to the money already paid into the fund. That money is just because there wasn't enough money by the government to actually fund the pensions out of the payments put into the system. The second major cause is legal protections against cuts. Here in California, we have something called the California Rule, which really essentially is a legal agreement saying that the government can't cut pensions without an equal benefit. So as a result, cities can't reduce their pension benefits even if they can go bankrupt, forcing them to cut public services or go into bankruptcy in order to survive. For example, Stockton, California, filed for Chapter 9 bankruptcy in 2012, over $147 million in unfunded pensions, was forced to cut their public services to the bare minimum, and had to let go over a fourth of their police force, despite being one of the most dangerous cities in California, according to Joanne Lau of Fordham Urban Law 2013. Despite this, the California courts have upheld this rule, saying that pension rights are obligations protected by the contract clause of the federal and state constitutions, says James Baker, Benefits Law Journal 2010. The third major cause of this is a lack of foresight. Simply, the government has not really thought out how much money pensions will actually cost. For example, on average, every $1 awarded to a California teacher's late term salary triggers $10 to $16 of pension obligations. So for example, a $3,000 salary increase in the last few years of a teacher's employment is a $30,000 to $45,000 increase in pensions. Multiplied by the number of teachers we have in California, that number grows very quickly and has a lot less funding than it might appear at first because of the difference in the income and in the payment. Another reason for this is that pension plans tend to overproject what their investments will be. So here, pensions tend to assume they'll get about an 8 to 7.5% rate on investment return, when in reality the actual rate is much lower. And in fact, last year, CalPERS, which is the largest pension fund in California, reported a 0.6% return rate. Their projection was 7.5%. So not even 10% of what they wanted to get actually ended up happening, and so they had to pull a lot of money from other funds in order to cover their pensions. So with these in mind, this is somewhat of the current situation in California. So as I mentioned earlier, when cities go bankrupt or before they go bankrupt, they have to end up cutting public services to pay for pensions. Even here in San Luis Obispo, in the next 3 years, we are projected to have about $9 million in debt, largely funded by our pension plans. As a result, our city council is considering cutting $1.4 million in public services in water, transit, and parking, all of which heavily affects us as college students because we rely heavily on public transportation and parking, and that's according to Nick Wilson, San Luis Obispo Tribune, 2017. The other major part of the current situation is that pushback against pension reform is very common because retirees are dependent on these benefits. This is John Cusson, a retired California government worker after 21 years of service. His town pulled out of California pensions because they couldn't afford the large payments required by them, and they had to pull out to not go bankrupt. As a result, his pension was cut by 60% to under $1,000 a month, leaving him with almost nothing and forcing him to find a part-time job in order to survive. And so, the overpromising and underfunding of pensions results in retirees being left with almost nothing after having worked decades of their life being promised this pension is here. So, in order to try and stop this, Governor Brown in 2012 wanted to lower pensions for new enrollees. However, his plan was, quote, strongly opposed by public employees unions who have a strong voice in CalPERS, and his fellow Democrats in the state legislature have let that languish. And that's Mary Walsh, New York Times, 2012. And so overall, California pensions are heavily underfunded. There's a lot of pushback against pension reform, largely due to retirees being entirely dependent on these pensions. And so services like education or public services are cut in order to help fund the budget gap. And this gap has been caused by a lack of foresight, legal protections against cuts, and fixed payment pensions that pay out regardless of the money actually paid in. Our public pensions are meant to reduce funding for public service and education and can severely damage the future of California.